With electric cars becoming more and more popular as time goes by, more and more of these are starting to look the same, like eggs. Hyundai has recently decided to take matters into their own hands with the all-new, full-electric Ioniq 5. Today, let's find out and see if this non-egg looking egg is worth your look. This particular Ioniq 5 is a 2023 limited dual motor all-wheel drive in their Shooting Star Black, which is more of a gray. I myself am not a fan of matte paint jobs or even gray paint jobs, which is the trend that's going on right now. So this is not particularly my spec. This paint is also a little bit more high maintenance than a normal Ioniq 5's paint job because you have to use matte specific soap to wash it. Hyundai offers this 5-door Xbox in 4 different trim configurations, and they really seem to be trying to target that sub 40K price point with their base SE, with the standard range, which is, we'll see why I wouldn't get that one. The MSRP on a standard range SE is right around $41,000 before the $7,500 EV tax credit. And as we climb up the Ioniq 5 spectrum, there's the SE, the SEL, and the Limited like this one. The MSRP of a base Limited, well, with no options, is right around $52,000. But this one, with its $1,000 Shooting Star Black paint job and its $4,000 all-wheel drive option, the MSRP of this one is just under $60,000, but that's before the tax credit. Even though the Ioniq 5 is a fully electric SUV, Hyundai offers this toaster with 3 different flavors. First of all is that base SE with the 55 kilowatt battery pack, the standard range rear wheel drive, makes an anemic 168 horsepower and only gives you 220 miles of range. If you're not into going fast, it's a good option, but it certainly is not for me. If you want more range and a little bit more power, Hyundai offers a 77 kilowatt battery pack that gives you up to 303 miles of range and 220 horsepower. Much more drivable option and much more equivalent to the base model VW ID4 and other competitors such as that. But if you want even more power, I know I'm talking a lot, but if you want even more power and more traction, I would look at this one. Now, there's no engine under the hood of this, but we can talk about it. So yes, the dual motor all-wheel drive, not ID4, Ioniq 5. This one uses 2 electric motors, hence the name dual motor, one in the front and one in the back, giving this 320 horsepower and a surprising 446 pound-feet of torque. This still uses that same 77 kilowatt battery pack, but this one, because it's all-wheel drive and has a little bit more power, more rolling resistance, gives you a range of 266 miles. I've actually been seeing that on a full charge, so thankfully it's not been lying, and it's been at least 90 degrees all the time here. Something that makes up for that range is the 4.5 second advertised 0 to 60 time for the Ioniq 5. And I can already say that this thing is pretty quick. Since we're already under the hood, I can talk about the frunk, because as you'd expect, an EV would have a frunk. This one doesn't have much of one. You can only fit less than a cubic foot of things in here. I would say you could fit like 2 hoagies and a few bags of chips or something, but really nothing else. I don't really see what I'd put in here. Now, I'd say the best way to explain charging an EV to non-EV people is explaining it like iPhone charger cables. The Ioniq 5, well, first, this is the charging port. It comes with an included level 1 charger, but that's the equivalent of using a new iPhone, like one of these, like a 12, with the little square brick that you used for like an iPod Touch for like 10 years ago. For example, the other day I plugged this in to charge with the included level 1 cable at about 60%. It told me I was gonna get to 90% in 30 hours. That's how slow those are. I wouldn't recommend using one of those because it's way too frustrating. Even though this thing looks long, it's mostly because of the long wheelbase, which aids in passenger volume in the second row. I'll talk about that in a moment. But this thing is actually 2 inches shorter than the outgoing Honda CR-V at 182 inches long. So it's really not that huge. It's just the short overhangs that give it that illusion. Interestingly enough, in terms of wheel options, Hyundai doesn't give you too many. All models will come standard with the 19-inch alloy wheels, but this one, since it has some options on it, has these 21-inch alloy wheels, which really match the futuristic look and the PlayStation or video game console look of this whole car. Something in my time with this car that I would say is a blessing and a curse is the hands-free power tailgate. And that's because it doesn't work when I want it to work. And sometimes it works when I don't want it to. When I'm just walking behind the car, it'll just open itself up. The way how it's supposed to work is if you have the key on you in a box or something, if you stand behind your Ioniq 5 for a few seconds, the tailgate will open. But see clearly right now it's not opened, and I don't know the parameters for it to open and to not open, but it is a power tailgate, and thankfully it's not terribly slow, but it does reveal a decent amount of space. There's 27 cubic feet of volume with the second row folded up just like now, but if you fold the 60-40 split seat flat, and it doesn't fold all the way flat, which is kind of annoying, but it does fit my bike, there's 60 cubic feet of volume, which is reasonable, not too bad actually for the size of this car. Underneath, there's not a lot. There's the space for the charger and a tire mobility kit because this does not come with a donut or any type of spare tire, but I kind of expected that. Now, of course, this isn't a big car, and electric cars are not yet bred to properly tow, but Hyundai claims a tow rating of 2,300 pounds. So not that bad if you want to go camping and haul a little bit of a trailer. But one more thing that I wanted to talk about is the lack of a rear wiper. Hyundai has talked about this, but of course it's because of aerodynamics. They put these 2 fins on the top of the spoiler, well, I'd say in front of the spoiler, to push water down and flow off. I would still rather have a rear wiper. Now this is really where we'll see that long wheelbase coming in. You can already see how wide the doors open. This is great if you have children, so you can put child seats in here, and of course there's latches everywhere, but step-in height is also very easy because this car only has about 7 or 8 inches of ground clearance, so it's not that high up, but we can close the door. As you can see, second row space is plentiful. I'm 5'9" and I can fit behind myself. This is the driver's seat is in the position that I sit in. Headroom is pretty good, even though this one has the big moonroof, and also legroom is insane as well, and I can fit my feet under the seats. There's map pockets behind both front seats, and it's actually pretty comfortable. The bottom of the rear seat is pretty soft and pretty supportive as well, but in this, I'm surprised at the price point does not offer heated rear seats, at least in this particular one, but I looked through Hyundai's website and couldn't find an option for that. But the seats themselves are comfortable. It's using Hyundai's white perforated leather interior. Honestly, this isn't the color that I'd get because it's already gotten so dirty, not even in the time that I've had it, but just from 5,800 miles of driving. There's like brown marks on the seats. There's this weird pink thing on the armrest, which is soft touch. But there's 2 small cup holders in here. This would only fit like a water bottle, which is fine, but anything bigger than that, it won't do. Even though there isn't a proper third zone for the rear passengers, Hyundai does offer air vents for the rear passengers, which is very nice on this 90-degree day. And in the middle, behind the center console, there aren't air vents, but there are 2 USB Type A ports and a little storage compartment that you could put your phone in. Overall, rear seat space is more than accommodating, and these seats slide forwards and backwards, giving more space in the trunk. Thank goodness you can actually have a little bit more space. We could sit up like this, and the seat also reclines with a little lever on the side of the seat. And I'm actually pretty comfortable back here. This actually is, not Korean luxury, but this is like an electric Toyota Avalon. Well, I guess I'd say electric Hyundai Azera. Lastly, there's sunshades in the back on this limited model, which is nice. And material quality is reasonable. Everything feels well built. It's just the materials that they've chosen, because this is an EV and they're being more plant friendly and energy friendly. Interesting feeling materials, but not in a bad way. As we step into the front seats, first, just like the rear seats, if you haven't noticed already, which you should, this has those interesting door handles that all electric cars seem to have, but they work better on this one because when you unlock the car, they pop out, so you don't have to wait for them to realize that you're here. This is the key fob for these modern Hyundais. You can see it. This car does have Smart Park. I've used it, but it works, but it's not it's not a game changer. This is the back side of the key fob as well, but this car is already running in my case, but just like any other car, thankfully, it's push button start, so you just put your foot on the brake and push the start button to start, to go. I like that it's a more normal startup process compared to pretty much every other EV on the market. Inside here, it's actually a pretty nice and futuristic place to be. The 2-spoke leather-wrapped steering wheel, it's been a long time since I've driven a car with a 2-spoke wheel. That was like since my 97 Tacoma. This one has a lot of buttons on it. Thankfully, they're not touch capacitive, they're actually buttons, even the black parts. The left side, those buttons control volume and audio, and also some Bluetooth controls. There's also a drive mode button on the steering wheel. The right side, those buttons control most of the cruise control and safety functions, but also those buttons let you toggle through the menu on the gauges. Now, speaking of the gauges, it's a fully digital display. The resolution of the screen is really nice. The only thing that I am not that crazy about is the white backing behind the screens. I think it would have been a little bit cleaner looking if it was black, but that's just a preference thing. The gauges themselves are full of information, and you can change how they look depending on drive mode and also in the settings, which I appreciate. And of course, just like all other Hyundais, when you put your left or right turn signal on, it'll show you a little view of your blind spot. In this one, the headlights are automatic and also the windshield wipers. And this one, as you can see, has paddle shifters, but they're not paddles. They actually control the regen braking. The left paddle makes the regen braking a little bit stronger and even can turn on the I pedal, which is a one pedal driving type deal, and the right paddle reduces the amount of regen braking the car is making. And the horn has a good sounding horn, just like all other Hyundais, but as we move to the center display, this is the pièce de résistance. The display is nicely lit, and I like that there's a home page that you can just rest on, but as we scroll through here, there's not a lot, so thankfully it's not overwhelming. There are some unnecessary things. There's a climate feature in the screen, but the climate controls are all hard touch buttons down below, which I'll get into in a second. I also don't like that in order to turn on the heated steering wheel and the heated and cooled front seats, you have to go into the infotainment menu and toggle that. And it's actually a little bit laggy, which is annoying. I thought it was just on startup, but even after a few hours of driving this, or after the whole day, it just takes a little bit long to load up things, longer than other cars would take, but it is quicker than some other cars as well. This one supports Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but only wired with USB Type A. This car doesn't have a USB Type C port anywhere in it, which is disappointing to me. Just like other Hyundais, this has a quiet mode, which only sends the audio from the radio to the front speakers and no audio to the back. So if you have a sleeping child, you can keep it sleeping. But I do have to commend Hyundai for making the infotainment more normal and less cluttered and overwhelming like some other EV brands. There is a backup camera with many views. This has a 360 camera. I don't know if you can hear the beeping that this car makes in reverse. There's no way to turn that off. That's mandatory. But this has a backup camera that's great resolution with a 360 view camera as well. And there's so many views to help you park this thing. There's views that show you the back of the car, the front of the car, the sides of the car. There's even this really cool surrounding 360 camera, which you can use your finger to move left and right around the car. It's actually very interesting and makes this pretty easy to park. Thankfully, because there's some gnarly blind spots back here. Down below, there's a little row of hard touch buttons for the infotainment screen, and underneath that is the dual zone climate control. The buttons are not actual buttons, which is a little bit annoying. They are all touch capacitive, and there's no feedback. I wish there was some sort of haptic feedback, but it's okay. Down below that, there's a USB port and a 12-volt power outlet. There's also a little bit more storage down here, which you could fit your phone in, but it's a little bit far. There's these two cup holders in front here, which are reasonably sized, but you can't fit something like a hydro flask in these cup holders. Behind that are two more USB ports and a wireless charger underneath that. Mind you, again, all the USB ports are USB type A, not USB type C. Wow, that fan was blowing. There's also a tray under here, which actually comes in handy a lot. You can put food in here, a purse, all kinds of things, and you can see this armrest lifts up and down. The armrest itself is a pretty soft touch material with some stitching on it as well, and there's a bit of a storage compartment inside here so you can hide things, because I wouldn't have known unless if I push this button, which you can see. This center console can also slide backwards and forwards. Backwards, I would imagine, just to make it easier for people to slide through here, but they should have made this. I feel like people would agree with me. They should have made this a 6-passenger car. If they have this area here, they make a 6-passenger option. What 6-passenger EVs are out there right now? Now I can finally talk about the seats. They're actually very comfortable in this limited model. It's a perforated material with stitching and an interesting orange piping on the sides as well. The driver and passenger side seats are heated and ventilated, and both functions work very well, especially the cooling function. The driver's seat features full power with two-way lumbar adjustment. There's also this really cool, I would say, calf extension. It's really like you're in a Shackleton seat, because there's support. I've never been in a car with support like this, but it's only on the driver's seat, and I believe that's a limited only option. There's also a button behind that, which is supposed to, like, the screen says, please make sure there is enough room behind the rear seat, and then push again. There's this other button which slides it all the way back. Oh, what else now? And then this. Wow, so you can, they make this mode so you can nap in it while you're charging it. That's actually pretty nice. Up top, there's an auto-dimming rearview mirror with garage door home link, but the rearview mirror isn't digital like some other cars. And of course, this has the huge moonroof that does not open, but it offers a lot of light, and it is a bit tinted as well. So I'm coming up on a week with this car, and I will say it's been cool in some ways and okay in other ways. We will soon be seeing the acceleration. Sadly, there are some people that there's like a line of people coming. I mean, this is what happens all the time. So I'll put myself into sport mode and go. Wow, you can kind of hear the rear wheels take off. This thing really picks up. And I'm on a windy road right now, and like, it handles well, but of course, this is not sporty. This is really not sporty. You can see it gets pretty easy to drive this, I would say, quickly with the dual motors. And it's quick. It is properly quick. 3, 2, 1. Oh. Like, it's not super fast, but it's quick. Whee! And I put it in I pedal when I'm driving quickly, so it's like I'm in a lower gear, so it keeps me at a good level of, speed, you know, because I don't have to push the brake, if that makes sense. We will now see. I don't know, like, it's fast. The acceleration is fast, but once you get used to how quick the car is, which, I don't know, after a few pulls, you start to be like, oh, okay. It just accelerates quickly, which makes it very easy and very convenient to zip around town. I was gonna say putt. You don't putt. This thing is very zippy, but when you're trying to drive this in a more spirited manner, it'll do it and it won't complain about it, but there is just no feeling. It really is like you're driving a video game sim with no force feedback. There is some weight. There's no feel. There's some weight in this steering wheel, but there's no feel at all. I can tell what the front tires are doing only because it makes the car change direction, but because after that, there's nothing. The ride is pretty good though, and talking about the steering in the way that there's no feel makes it seem negative, and it really isn't, because if you're just driving this around mindlessly, it's perfectly fine. One thing that I don't like about this is the turning circle. It's quite wide, especially for an EV, but thankfully it did this though. Let's take off. And on bumpy roads, it takes the bumps well. This uses normal suspension, and it's just very calm. It's a very calm and sedated experience. Thankfully, unlike some other EVs that I've tested out, the brakes in this actually feel adequate for the amount of power. In regen mode, it actually catches you pretty quickly, so it's just like you're driving something in manual mode, so you feel like it's like, waiting for you to just take off. We'll drive it, take it around this corner here. I don't know. It's only because I'm on this road that the car makes me feel like driving kind of quickly, but it's very easy to do it. There's not a lot of oversteer, not much understeer either. Like, it feels comparable to an all-wheel drive ID4 or a more normal, I guess I'd say plebeian version of the Mustang. The suspension can be a little bit soft, but that was only because there were some bumps. If you're driving normally, which I'll put myself into normal mode again, and we can cruise, it takes bumps well because of that long wheelbase. You really don't feel jostled or jittered by any imperfections on the road. Of course, it's not going to be like a Mercedes with air suspension, but it actually takes bumps pretty well. I will say, the Ioniq 5 isn't inherently a bad car. I would say a lot of people like them. I see a reasonable amount of them on the road, so I would imagine people like them. I just cannot daily drive this thing because it lacks Apple CarPlay or Android Auto in wireless form, not just wired. And in terms of the driving experience, it's pretty numb. The steering is nice. It rides well. Of course, this feels nice, but all these electric cars feel pretty similar in terms of acceleration. If you want something sportier than this, because the Ioniq 5 is certainly not a sporty car, even though it does handle well, I would look at the Kia EV6, especially the EV6 GT. Maybe we'll see one of those in the future. But enough rambling. Thank you all for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Let me know if you have an Ioniq 5 or even an EV6 in the comments below, and I'm curious to see if you've liked it or not liked it in your time of ownership. But thank you again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye, peeps.